Hello, hello. Welcome everyone. I just clipped somebody's, oh my gosh, did we forget how to do this? Sorry guys. That is very delicate. Whose is this? Is that okay? All right. The city at work, you hear it. There you go. Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for joining us today in Old City Hall, the recent John Waldron Arts Center. I think of 1915 when this was built and how many people have hallowed these halls in and out for so many years. It's nice to be here with them. This is one of the very first city events we've held in person over the last 14 months, indoors. Forgive us, we're not used to this. This is unusual. You may regret having to stand for speeches fully dressed, even below the waist, listening to things. I don't know. But I love it, and I'm really glad you're here. I do want to make a note. I'm fully vaccinated, plus my 2 weeks and more. So I'm removing my mask. We are still in a pandemic, so I encourage everybody to stay safe and do the right thing. It's a little, as somebody said, you remember how complicated it was getting into this? It may be quite complicated getting out of it too, so hang in there and thank you all for being here. How very Bloomington it is that we're reconvening here in this beloved civic space, arts space. It is very good to see so many friends in person. And can I say too, you look really good. Your features, your lighting is good, your background is good, you're not buffering or anything. It's really nice to be together again, and thank you for being here. It is really good to see so many stalwarts of the arts community here as well. And particularly let me note those of you who have volunteered your time as members of the Waldron Recommendation Task Force over the last 6 months. Would you raise your hand if you were on that task force, please? So we can thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am deeply grateful on behalf of the whole community for the work you have done and for your deep commitment to our vibrant Bloomington and the iconic arts community of this city. Let me also thank Mary Catherine Carmichael, Alex Crowley, Sean Starwitz, Adam Wason and crew, Parks Department and crew for all their work through all this too that makes it possible for us to be here. Now we're joined today by the co-chairs of that task force, Maya Michelson and Valerie Pena, the dynamic duo who led this team, two extraordinary treasures of Bloomington, and they are going to share the task force's very thorough engagement and evaluation process and the recommendations that the work produced. And then I'll announce some next steps based on those recommendations and including Bloomington's art scene across the board. About 2 weeks ago, in New York City, Broadway announced its plans to reopen their shows in the fall at full capacity. We may not be exactly like Broadway, but our arts community is anxious to get back on track too. This fact and feedback from key community members and organizations suggested we should lay out the plans as soon as possible after the task force report to help everyone else plan accordingly and also clarify any misapprehensions that can flourish. So with that, first up, please join me in welcoming to the stage in real life, Valerie Pena. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hamilton. I too am vaccinated and past my time, so I'm going to take my mask off to do this. I appreciate very much the just the support that Mayor Hamilton and the entire city staff have given to both Maya and I as we walk through this process. In November, to give you a little background, in November of 2020, Mayor Hamilton announced that he was going to form a Waldron Recommendation Task Force. That was in preparation for the impending ownership reversion of the Waldron facility from Ivy Tech back to the city. And at that time, he asked Maya, who is the Deputy Director of the Indiana Arts Commission, and myself to co-chair that task force. The purpose of the task force was going to be very concise. We were to provide an evaluation of the financial, the structural, and the functional aspects of this building. We were to offer a short term, and that was kind of 1 to 3 years, recommendations for its use. And then we were to offer long-term uses past the 3 years and what is the long-term future of this building and the possibilities that could be here. So Maya and I made a commitment at that time to the mayor that we chose a date, late April, early May, that we would deliver a report that would detail the task force recommendations. A public posting was put out for interested citizens to apply for the consideration for being a member. We received about a dozen, and those names, along with a list that we had developed that represented the arts, financial, real estate, development, small business, legal, downtown, all of those different communities coming together. We looked at taking those names with the 12 and how do we create the best task force to represent the community. We also included a representative from both the city and the county council. The result was a very robust and engaged group of 21 community members. I believe I can speak for Maya when I say how fortunate we were to have such a strong list of experts willing to commit their time to this project. It was hours of Zoom meetings. We never got to all meet here, actually, which was a little bit challenging for those when we were doing some of the reviews. But over the next 5 months, we reviewed reports from Tabor Bruce and Quality Roofing, who did a very in-depth due diligence on this building's physical condition and all the fiscal requirements that would be required to go with it. We reviewed the appraisal results that came from the Monroe Owen Appraisal Company. We executed an operational cost overview that was conducted by a subcommittee of the task force. And we conducted, most importantly, 8 focus groups that keyed in on the areas of people from historic redevelopment, artists and art organizations, current and past users of the facility, downtown business members, WFHB staff and supporters, and community leaders from the Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development, Downtown Bloomington, and Visit Bloomington. And our 8th group, who I can say was one of the livelier conversations, was a group from the young professionals of under 40. So a lot of fun things that come, and it's one of those moments when you realize you're old. The focus group conversations, they were passionate. They included a variety of options for this building, such as co-work space, a new visitor center, event space, affordable housing, a senior center, and even apartments. But one common thread amongst all of the groups was to somehow leverage this building in the best interest of the arts community. And while all recognized that it wasn't the best fit for the arts, at this point in time, it was all we had. So the group then formulated a group of recommendations that I will turn over to Maya to tell you about.
Thanks, Val. I'm on Team Moderna, so because I understand now that's a thing, so I'm going to take my mask off. I'm 2 weeks out. And I also like to think I have a little Dolly Parton pulsing through me because I think she helped fund the Moderna vaccine. But anyway, again, I echo Val's comments about the commitment of the task force members. A Zoom 21-person committee meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon is a challenge. But I don't think we ever broke any of those meetings until 6:30 or after. It was clear the group was committed, concerned, wanted to help, felt like this place was an asset to the arts community and they wanted to help be a part of shepherding it forward. So my hat's off to them. Lots of hours of meetings. So yeah, one more shout out to those folks. That's a great job. So as Val mentioned, we heard from the 8 focus groups. The task force members talked lots of ideas about possibilities. So how to come to some sort of consensus about what's the best path forward for this facility. And the group landed on a consensus, which was, as Val mentioned previously, leveraging the building to its fullest extent, whatever that might mean, in support of the performing and visual arts community. And if you've read the report, you'll see, if you've read the report, you'll see some scenarios that are out there, 4 scenarios that were discussed amongst task force members. But then eventually we had to come down to a series of recommendations because we wanted to provide the city a chance to have some solid recommendations that the group had talked about. And a credit to Mayor Hamilton and the administration, no guardrails. Let the task force deliberate, come back to us with your best ideas. And as a task force chair, co-chair, I really appreciated that freedom, the support, the confidence that the administration had in coming up with the best possible solution. So my hat's off to them. So with the overarching recommendation of leveraging the building to its fullest extent in support of the performing and visual arts community, supplemented by some additional recommendations, which I'll just read to you now. Number 1, there was a recognition that 1 to 3 years, not long enough. We now know Broadway is going to open in September. When the task force began meeting, we had no idea when things might start. So it felt reasonable to extend that time frame more toward 5 years. And so you'll see that in the recommendations. Gives arts organizations an opportunity to plan, an opportunity to rebuild, re-engage without that 1 to 3 year timeline staring at them. So that was really important to the task force to extend that time frame of short-term consideration for the arts community. The task force also recommended that the city continue public ownership of this facility for that 5 year period. They also recommended a different kind of management and ownership structure, which has piqued a lot of interest, a cultural improvement corporation, a CIC, which would be a new thing. And of course, that's what Bloomington's about, right? Doing new things, doing something different. And this cultural improvement corporation would potentially own this facility and perhaps also the Buskirk Chumley and help be responsible for its upkeep and then potentially enter in a request for proposals for a management of that facility as well as possibly the Buskirk Chumley. The most analogous example I can come up with is the Capital Improvement Board in Indianapolis that owns the convention center as well as some other properties. I think Terre Haute also has something similar that owns their convention center. And then the most, for me, as a theater major and as a performing arts person, the most exciting thing to me about this is commissioning a feasibility study for a purpose-built arts facility that serves both the performing and visual arts community. What we heard over and over from the mayor and from the administration is we have an amazing arts community, and for years and years, they've made do. We make do in good spaces. This is a good space. The Buskirk Chumley is a good space. But Bloomington has never had a purpose-built arts facility, so why not see whether or not we can do that? And so a feasibility study is just that. It's to see whether it's feasible, what's feasible, how big, where, how much, who can pay for what, and all those sorts of things. That's all part of a feasibility study. But the administration encouraged us to think big and gave the task force permission to think big. And by that, I think, saying to the arts community that you can think big. And that's really important. It's time for the arts community to have the facility, hopefully, that's more up to the quality of the work that it produces. Again, not that the current facilities we have aren't great. They are great, they're here, they exist now, but why not use this opportunity to investigate something bigger and more exciting? So That's essentially the task force recommendations. You can read them in the riveting report, which is available on the city website, bloomingtonin.gov/Waldron. And again, I want to thank my co-chair, Valerie, for going on this journey with me. It was lots of fun, lots of back and forth emails. And again, my thanks to the task force members and the administration for their support of the task force, the building, and the arts in this community. And now I'm going to kick it back to Mayor Hamilton.
Thank you, Dolly, Maya, and Valerie. I cannot thank enough these two terrific leaders in our community and the group that they worked with for really hard work, complicated, challenging, a lot of different viewpoints about it, but we owe a great debt to you both and to the members of the task force and the city staff. So thank you so much for that. Now, nobody went into 2020 imagining what was in store, including the prospect of a year without in-person fine arts. But last spring in Bloomington, many other places, this fate loomed. The pandemic upended how we could see live performances, gallery shows, and experience community life in every way. Physical distancing and capacity restrictions slammed our vibrant arts and culture sector right in the midsection, created a long road to recovery, and some have still not raised their curtain. Despite these dark clouds, the miasma that hit, and this darkened building's own symbolism, our tenacious, hardworking arts community did not fold. Artists, musicians, art purveyors, all kinds of culture bearers worked tirelessly through this historic pandemic to shift business models, create new digital and safe experiences for us and our families. Still, no matter how resourceful and inventive, our favorite arts organizations and artists needed our help. They need our help and our support, especially as they try new hard things. In this city, the arts, whether music, theater, visual arts, literature, dance, film, the arts are in our DNA. It's who we are. It's who we want to be. And our identity as a cultural capital is at the same time a very significant economic and jobs driver. According to national data, 2018, the arts contribute $750 billion to the United States gross domestic product. That's over 4%. That's more than agriculture, more than transportation or warehousing. Bloomington is richly blessed to have a very strong creative sector of individuals, businesses, and arts and cultural organizations, fueled in part by Indiana University's world-class talent that powered the cultural vitality of our community. So we invest in it. For example, this city was the first in Indiana to pass a 1% for the arts ordinance. This year, we will have completed over $500,000 of public arts projects funded by this mechanism. That's our predecessor. National estimates from the Americans for the Arts say the pandemic cost over $15 billion in losses to our arts. To help mitigate that impact locally, our city government had to pivot also. Since last May, a year ago, the Bloomington Arts Commission, alongside the Bloomington Urban Enterprise Association, has administered grants totaling $170,000 to continue to support arts and culture organizations, including $60,000 in additional grants this year as part of the Recover Forward initiative supported by our City Council. Let me thank them too. The Bloomington Arts Commission will be making recommendations for its current grant cycle next month. Many city departments and staff, and of course many volunteers, embody our community's commitment to the arts and culture sector. Our Parks Department continually supports the arts with programs, events, festivals, countless hours of staff support. Annually, the Parks, City Council, and Redevelopment Commission commit over $137,000 to the Bloomington Buskirk Chumley Theater. Switchyard Park offers new possibilities with the pavilion and main stage. In 2018, through the Community Family Resources and Economic and Sustainability Departments, our community welcomed the Black E. Brown Arts Festival to prioritize Black, Indigenous, and Latinx artists in our community. Our Public Works Department doesn't charge for festival fees, unlike most cities our size, and supports many festivals with in-kind staff support. Kirkwood's new, say it, bollard system, infrastructure, the new bollard system, that iconic street now has become a premier festival and pedestrian corridor. The forward-thinking approach that put those bollards in makes it easy to close the streets. It's helped beloved restaurants get through this past year. The list goes on. Some might include the parking garage coming next door as well as part of that. So as we consider this facility, this building, we reflect on countless performances that we've seen here. You can remember them. You can think of them. We think about the paintings and sculptures and photographs and thousands of pieces of work installed in these galleries over the years. The years that we've been informed and entertained by community-powered radio, WFHB, which is also living here. We consider the role this building, the Waldron, has played over the last 3 decades as the community's arts incubator, a role repeatedly referenced by those who contributed to the work of the task force. And as referenced in the report, we acknowledge some of the building's limitations as a space for the performing and visual arts. So, taking the task force recommendations to heart, and thank you again to the 2 co-chairs, members, and staff, I'd like to announce today some short and long-term proposals for this building and for the city's commitment to the arts community more generally. This all follows the umbrella recommendation, as Maya quoted, to, quote, leverage the building to its fullest extent to support the performing and visual arts in the community, close quote. And let me preface all of this by saying some of these proposed actions will require city council approvals for expenditures, so I'm looking at you all too, because I listen, okay? So the specifics. First, I am today announcing agreement with the recommendation to dedicate this great old building to serve the arts for the next 5 years with management. Managed either by the city or a selected management organization. As the task force said, this will, quote, allow arts organizations utilizing the facility a secure opportunity to rebuild operation revenue post-pandemic. Second, I'm following the recommendation as well to invest as soon as possible what is needed in capital investments to bring the building into code compliance and to make it safe and usable, which we estimate at around $515,000 to be invested quickly in the coming months. Third, I'm announcing today for all to hear and use for planning that we plan to reopen the Waldron to the public by Monday, January 3rd, 2022. Now, I will also say we hope to provide earlier access to those who want to put on a show January 3rd, if you want to be here. Anyway, next, again, following the recommendations, we will issue a request for information, an RFI, to elicit third-party management proposals for the Waldron to consider alongside one already received. We plan to release the RFI very promptly, no later than July. Next, again, following the recommendation, we do intend to commission a third-party study on a potential future arts facility to be built within the downtown region to help us determine the type, size, location, and cost for such a potential facility. And we plan to commence that study by this summer. Next, a word about the Buskirk Chumley Theater. It too needs investments. It's approaching its centennial, by the way, you may know, next year. And I will be asking for capital funds from City Council to invest in long-term maintenance of that building as well, and may be involved in third-party management along with the Waldron. Next, just a couple more, don't worry. Next, yeah. Next, I will work with City Council to consider the proposal of a new quasi-public corporate entity, something like mentioned, a Cultural Improvement Corporation or Capital Improvement Board, to oversee and manage public properties like the Waldron, the Buskirk, and perhaps others in coming months. And finally, as part of funding requests in the coming weeks from the critically important American Rescue Plan Act and our city budget, I will be asking the City Council for significant new investment in economic recovery grants for impacted arts groups, artists, related organizations in our community. These can include allocations to be made toward Waldron and Buskirk, both in capital improvements and equipment needs or upgrades to ensure accessibility, equity, and use for all groups from volunteer to professional, as well as open to the wider arts community for recovery needs. I will work with City Council and others to develop the details in the coming weeks. So these are some of the steps to take now for our arts sector, and indeed our whole community, to help build back better. I'll just note a little aside that you might watch for additional indications in the weeks ahead about future other categories and outlines for potential investments of the American Rescue Plan Act funds in areas such as housing, infrastructure, more on jobs and the economy and such. So, in times of trauma or turmoil, during wars or depressions or pandemics, the arts have always persevered. After the Great Plague, Europe saw the Renaissance. During our own country's Great Depression, the Federal Works Progress Administration ensured arts and culture would endure across both urban and rural divides. We here in Bloomington, in our way, in our time, must also commit to the livelihood of the arts. We rely on the arts to give us vision for new possibilities, to give us healing and heartwarming, to give us motivation and empathy, to confront us, challenge us. Coming out of this pandemic, we need to recover, yes, but we also need to dream. We need to ask ourselves, what is possible? And we need to help the arts to help us to imagine and pursue this next Bloomington chapter. So, what a fitting place it is, this beautiful old civic treasure we're in like this, for us to begin and gather to start that journey together. I look forward to seeing you again on or about January 3rd, right back here for a big celebration. Thanks a lot.